Our next speaker is Dr. Carolyn McCann from the School of Psychology. She's going to talk to you today about emotional intelligence, I think.
I am, yes. So I plan to give... This is a confusing keyboard. Okay, I'll use the arrows. I plan to give a slightly different talk, but I have these slides, which I'll be going through. So I'll give you the Contiki tour today of what emotional intelligence is, how it's measured, and what my research has to say about whether it's useful or not. So whatever it is, it's really popular. I've got a red graph here that illustrates how many scientific articles per year are published over a period from 1985 to the present. And you can see it's going up and up and up. What you can also see, perhaps not fantastically well, is that in 1995 there were almost no publications. Nobody knew anything. Then this book came along here, this Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, and suddenly everybody was interested in it. It's on the cover of Time magazine, it's on Oprah's book club, it's all over the place being used in business and HR applications. But as we can see in the red graph, there's not much evidence that it really does anything. So this led to a bit of a backlash in public perceptions and in scientific circles that emotional intelligence was just this hyped up buzzword that wasn't particularly meaningful. And this is illustrated by this Dilbert cartoon that I thought I'd put in for a bit of light relief, where Dogbert says to Dilbert, "Don't mind the stopwatch, I'm testing my theory that people get dumber every minute." And Dilbert says, "It's not so simple. You also have to consider my emotional intelligence, which is defined in a book I haven't read." 12 seconds. So this really illustrates this idea that it's just a bunch of hype. So there were a large number of unsubstantiated claims floating around in the late 90s based on public perceptions, and one of them was that emotional intelligence was more important than IQ. So this came from the subtitle of Dan Goleman's book there. So is it? We now have a lot more research, as you can see from the red line, so we can figure that out directly. We have evidence. This is the evidence. We know that intelligence explains about 25% of the differences between people in their job performance. Emotional intelligence explains somewhat less than 5%. I will argue, however, if we look at this next page, that maybe job performance isn't everything. There are many other spheres of our lives. Even academics have personal lives. And we want to be high on well-being as well as effective workers. And what I've found in my own research is that people's ability to manage their emotions and have other core components of emotional intelligence actually explains a lot of the differences between people in terms of their well-being. So this is that middle red bar there. Emotional intelligence is explaining about 30% of the differences between people in their well-being and about 15% of the differences between people in the ways that they cope with stress. So how is emotional intelligence measured? It's defined according to this picture here, mainly as emotion management. So the ability to regulate and manage one's own emotions and the emotions of others, which depends on a couple of subsidiary skills: the ability to understand your own emotions, how emotions progress over time, how they're related to different situations, and the ability to perceive emotions, so to be able to read someone's facial expression or tone of voice. And here's two examples of how emotional intelligence is measured. Firstly, with these rating scale type items. I know how to keep calm in difficult situations. So one would hope that someone high in managing emotions would strongly agree with that. One of the issues with these sorts of scales is that they're easily fakeable in high stakes contexts like for selection purposes. A further issue is that they require some sort of level of self-insight, and people who are really crap at managing emotions can't really answer these properly. And that's generally what you want to know, is whether people are very bad at these things and hence shouldn't be hired or selected for med school. So there's another way to measure emotional intelligence, and that's with these scenario type items. And this is an item from my test, the test of situational test of emotion management. And you're asked to figure out what's the best thing for Jill to do in this emotional situation. So a demanding client's taking up a lot of Jill's time and then asking to speak to her boss about her performance. Although her boss assures her that her performance is fine, Jill feels upset. So some of the... that circle should just be around option D. That is meant to be the best answer here. So this is getting at whether people actually have this knowledge base in how to manage emotions. So some of my research is in how does emotional intelligence fit in with what we know about IQ generally. So the commonly most accepted model of intelligence is that it's not one thing, it's many things, and that's illustrated in this picture. So intelligence consists of these different kinds of abilities: fluid reasoning, a good knowledge base of acculturated knowledge, the ability to process visual stimuli. What I found in my own research is that actually emotional intelligence is really one of these abilities. It's a subset of intelligence. So these early claims that emotional intelligence really is more important than IQ don't make a lot of sense, because emotional intelligence is in fact part of IQ. And one of the other things that I looked at is what is it that emotionally intelligent people do that makes them different from other people, that makes them more successful, that makes their well-being better? And it's that they actually use different types of coping strategies. So they're more likely to address the problem, that is, use problem-focused coping, and less likely to use avoidant-focused coping, so to curl up into a little ball and hide under a pile of coats, as you would expect. So it's these qualitatively different sorts of behaviours that people use that increase their well-being. And that's me, Jenny.